Black cisgender heterosexual identified men are killing Black trans women. Black ones.
We are not talking about it in the church.
Those street guys are already engineers. If they're mixing drugs and stuff together, they're chemical engineers.
If you're just like, yeah, let's kill 50 cops just because, that's only a fraction of the Black people that they killed. Wait, now you're talking about my wife.
For those of you who are joining in, we are talking about just the housing in the Black community and owning property, why it's important, and how to get yourself in there.
When I think of financial literacy, I just don't think of the classroom work. I think some of it is practical application.
I'm scared, especially, calling them to arms, talking about poll workers or poll watchers. That is rooted in history of voter suppression and intimidation.
Joe Biden needs to make that a part of his educational platform.
Call that shit out.
I don't see much value in you speaking in tongues, and yet when you speak in English, you don't say nothing for my people.
Many of the reasons why we're dying is because of the conditions we live under that cause our health to be so bad, and that cause it's the food, it's the water, it's clean that shit up first.
When their fathers had prostate cancer, I had like a 150% chance of getting cancer, being diagnosed with cancer. I had a friend that did a raw vegan diet, 20 years remission, had thyroid cancer, never had surgery. I'm like, that's what I'm doing.
Hey, I'm Janora McDuffie, and welcome to another episode and edition of This Week in BPS. Usually you are greeted by the one and only beautiful Christy Ferris, but our sister girl is holding it down, taking care of business, and shooting live right now in New Mexico, the third season of her show, Monogamy. So, Christy, we are sending you love and holding it down for you in the meantime. Yes, Abdul and I are going to learn how to get along today so we can steer these reins and have a fantastic show. And that is definitely what we have lined up. It cannot be February, and we cannot have a show called This Week in BPS, standing for Black People Shit, and not talk about Black History Month. So that is what we are going to talk about today, not just about Coretta Scott King, Martin Luther King Jr., but all the amazing things and accomplishments of Black folks that we have left out along the way, our education system has. So, in fact, with Abdul's fantastic writing, he has left us a quote to pop off the conversation before I bring everyone in. It is an African proverb, and it says, "Until the lions have their historians, tales of the hunt shall always glorify the hunter." And for years, African-American history has seen to fully embody this statement, omitting the accomplishments of Black people out of our public school curriculums. Today, we have educator and Black historian Elizabeth Leiba here to discuss with Abdul and myself what we haven't been told. So let me bring in writer and my main man, Abdul. Oh, bam, you brought yourself in.
No, Martika brought me in half a second early.
For you new folks out there, Martika is our associate producer behind the scenes, always making sure we stay on task. How you doing today, Abdul?
I'm fine. I like how you winged it at the beginning, and I will try to do my best to not argue with you this entire show. I'll make it a point to just show love and positivity.
Hey, you know what? I think people like when we go head to head. And as long as it's genuine and out of love and we make up at the end, I think it's okay.
Of course it is. So.
But today it's right up your alley, right? All about
history. Yeah, I love history. I love history, specifically African and African-American history. So this should be an interesting and great conversation, especially with Liz Leiba and all her credentials and everything that she brings to this particular conversation. So I can't wait to get started.
All right. Well, then without further ado, let's bring her in. Let's have her talk some hot topics with us at the start of our show. Let me give her proper props. In the meantime, that would be, yes, Elizabeth Leiba. She is the founder and course developer for Black History and Culture Academy. It is a subscription-based e-learning platform that teaches courses on African history and literature, African American history and literature, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's also a co-host on her own podcast, The Ed Up Experience. It's an educational podcast that can be heard on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, whatever your favorite platform is. She's also a college professor with more than 10 years of experience American literature and history at several colleges and universities. So everybody give a this week's BPS welcome to Liz Leiba. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk to y'all today.
Thank you for being here. We are excited to have you.
Absolutely.
We pop off the show with some hot topics, and we figured we would just bring you in on this conversation as well, because a lot of things that are happening really fall into your field of play. So we would love your 2 cents too. But we're going to start it off light and easy though, and talk about Nick Cannon and Dave Chappelle getting their shows back. Abdul, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, I do like the fact that both of these brothers got their show back. I'm curious about the conditions that they were put under in order to get their show back. Like, what were the requirements? Because I know Nick Cannon said some things about the Jewish community that they didn't like, and I know he went on this apology tour. So I want to know what that involved. More regards to him than Chappelle, because Chappelle's stuff is just pre-recorded stuff that he's getting money back from stuff he's done before through HBO and through Netflix. But the Nick Cannon show, I want to know, is there some, some noose around his neck or some chain attached to what he has to say now? Because I saw right after they took the show off, then he had a rabbi come on his show that he does at Howard University, and they had this conversation about what he said, and he apologized, and I was just like, well, I heard what he said, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but I don't know if they were historically inaccurate. And I think that's a problem if you have to apologize for history. So.
Liz, you got something you want to add to that?
I agree with Abdul. I mean, when you go on an apology tour, I feel like some of that is performative in sense of, people that from the Jewish community, they come down on him. They said it was anti-Semitic. I posted that the black man was the original man and that black people are the original people. So everybody is black. So if he said that the Jews were the blacks were the original Jews, I don't necessarily feel like there should have been an apology tour for that, because that's historically, archaeologically proven that black people were the original people. Black people were on every continent, and that's not me speaking that. That's archaeologists. That's historically accurate that black folk were originally Africa's the cradle of civilization, right? So black folk, a very small group of maybe 1,000 or so, a few hundred black folk traveled into the northern area of the Middle East. And that's literally where everybody else originated from. They went and kind of mixed with Neanderthal. They mixed here, they mixed there, and went onto every continent. Literally, even America, black folk were here, and we were the original indigenous people. So to say that black folk were not the original Jews would actually be historically inaccurate. And I think maybe just from a, political point of view, maybe they just didn't like the way that it sounded, but it's not inaccurate what was said. It's just maybe the way that it comes off, maybe in the way that he said it, maybe it sounded a little bit boisterous, and maybe they just didn't like his tone, but he didn't say anything wrong.
Well,
he literally said that black people were in Africa. That's literally, if you condense the statement, he said that the Jews were in Africa. So he said black people were in Africa. That's literally what it came down to. But they said it was anti-Semitic, and it took a show from him. So I'm curious to see. I don't know. I don't want to like beat this down into something that it doesn't have to be. But it's infuriating that you can goof off and make fun of one another and call each other all sorts of names on television. On his show specifically, they have this whole segment where all they do is roast each other. And then you tell the truth and then you yank your show. And it's like, that's crazy. Like, you rather us just goof around and just call each other names and make fun of one another. Anyway, that's besides.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's necessarily crazy. I definitely think that's more intentional. I mean, same reason we have a hard time greenlighting some powerful stories that really progress and show us in a positive light, but we can see Soul Plane all day.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of pushback when it comes to truth. And I think a lot of it is in perception. Perception becomes reality. So there's a perception of what certain communities look like and what they want to be perceived as. And unfortunately, when you talk about Black folk being the original folk, wherever that might be, whatever continent that be, you could go to any continent and Black people were there first, because obviously Africa is the cradle of civilization. So the idea that that should be something that anybody would push back against really defies reality, because it's absolute truth. I think it's just really the perception of it and what people want to be the general consensus. I had a post that said that, and it had the pictures of the original, the archaeological evidence of the original Black man on every continent, and the amount of backlash and the amount of trolling I got is like unbelievable. But if I, like you said, if I posted a meme that said, I don't know, Mr. President, I'm talking, everyone laughs, or it's something that's seen as, oh, that's frivolous. But if you're posting some truth, people just don't want to hear it. So.
Did you see that Times Magazine cover a couple weeks ago, where it had the picture of Jesus, and it was the traditional Jesus. It was literally on the cover of the Times Magazine, and they go, "Who was Jesus?" That was like the quote underneath the bottom, and a couple people put out that Jesus looks nothing like this European blah 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 blah, but it was nothing disrespectful to anything they said. They got pulled from Instagram, pulled from Facebook, and just because they said the guy you're talking about looks nothing like the picture on this cover of this magazine.
There's a lot of historical inaccuracy just when it comes to just general knowledge about anything, whether it's Jesus or who Jesus was, Buddha, all these different historical characters, Beethoven, whoever you could think of. There is a perception in people's mind of what that person looks like. And if you push back against that, then people are upset. So yeah, a lot of that is just historically, there have been inaccuracies that have been pervasive over time.
Well, Liz, I know this is definitely your wheelhouse. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think it's easier for us to accept a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus than a Jesus that looked like you and I?
Well, I think it's just historically, race is a societal construction, right? There's really no such thing as race when we look at it, because if Black is the default, really, there are more Black people in the world and people of color in the world than there are white people. So those in the dominant culture, when we talk about the dominant or the majority culture here in America or in the Western world, that's actually not the case everywhere else throughout the globe. So if we think of the idea that really it's the original people that populated the earth are from Africa, there was more of a financial rationale for race to be something that was conceptualized, right? Because if I'm going to try to find a workforce to man these plantations and farm these crops, and we've identified that the indigenous people here in America can't farm these crops, they're very susceptible to disease, and now we've pinpointed that we can go to Africa and there's a labor force that we can produce here, or we can find here, and they already have tribal infighting, and we can find a way to turn them against each other. How do we make sure that we rationalize that? Because if you think about the reality of it, which is very painful and hurtful for us to understand, Black folk were chattel slaves. Black Africans were enslaved. So I like to try to look at our language. We say that we had slaves in America. We didn't have slaves. We had Africans that were enslaved, Africans that were kidnapped and brought to America. And how are we going to justify the fact that we're raping, we're killing, we're putting people in chains, we're making people work from sun up to sundown? How are we going to justify that and still be able to maintain that workforce and still be able to justify, just from a moral point of view, what we're doing? Because this is a human being. This isn't a mule. This isn't a cow. So, okay, these people are subhuman. These people are not worthy of being on the same stratosphere. So how do we do that? We say, well, white is superior, Black people are inferior. They don't have the intelligence. We're really doing them a favor by bringing them here. They don't have religion. They don't have a culture. They don't have a history. So Black folk, Africans that were enslaved, Africans that were brought from Africa to farm here and farm the cotton and basically build America from the ground up, there had to be some type of justification. And that's why that we weren't seen as intelligent. We weren't seen as the original man. We weren't seen as Jesus. We weren't seen as any of these things, because to do that would be to humanize. And if you humanize someone, how can you literally rape them at will? How can you work them from sun up to sundown? How can you sell them? How can you have a child with that person and then say, well, I'm going to turn around and sell that child because even though that's my offspring, that child is a slave and I don't want anything to do with that child. There's something really repulsive about the idea that that happened, but that's literally what was going on. In order to justify that, you have to make that person subhuman. So clearly that person can't be represented in history. That person can't be elevated to say that they had any contributions. You can't have had language, you can't have had any music, you can't have had literature. And we know that that's not true. We know that there were great civilizations in Africa long before that was even anything in the imagination of Europe. Because when they got there, there were established cities, there were established agriculture, there were established legacy. But in order to justify what was happening, which was we're going to kidnap people, you have to exploit the tribal warfare, get the people that are fighting amongst each other to join you to say, okay, you know what? We don't like that tribe over there. We're going to go ahead and help you. And that's where sometimes I get the rhetoric of, well, you guys enslaved each other. No, there was tribal warfare that was going on. And I think if the Africans at that time would have even in their wildest imagination thought this was what they were selling their brothers and their sisters, even though they were enemies into, they never would have participated, because the type of brutality that even in Africa, there was slavery, because people a lot of times like to say, well, there was slavery in ancient civilizations. There was slavery in Africa, slavery throughout the world, but not indefinite, not you were born into, not the one drop rule, not because of the color of your skin. It was like, okay, you're my enemy. We had a fight. Now you're in my household and you have to take care of my children. You have to be in the household. And maybe after 10 years, you can buy yourself out. Indentured servitude was definitely something that was there. But the idea of brutality, the idea of legalized rape, the idea of killing indiscriminately, whipping, and the things that were happening in American slavery, that atrocity has never been seen throughout the rest of the world. And even people now say, well, there's sex slavery, there's all kinds of different slavery. The kind of slavery that happened here in America on American soil is particularly brutal. And that chattel slavery was something that is the original sin. And we still haven't reckoned with that sin. And that's why American history is not told accurately, because I think a part of it is just not wanting to reckon with the truth of what our original sin is here in the United States.
Well, the concept of even having a Black History Month is in jeopardy. We have got Austin Chain, for example. He's the Black gubernatorial candidate in Michigan who believes that Black History Month is unfair, prejudiced, possibly illegal, and promises to cancel it if he is elected. So what do you both think about that?
He has a point and he doesn't have a point. If he was on the side of it's wrong because it should be studied every day, it's illegal because we are not included in the regular curriculum, if it should be eradicated because for every one historical moment that you show of a Black person, you show of a Black person in this country and the true history that happened to Black people in this country, I'd probably agree with him, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying that I kind of get I don't want to call names, but I get tired of some of these House people who want to side on the side of individuals, the majority, in order to gain favor, so they can get something like a political position or money, if this feels to me, I don't know his intentions completely, but this feels to me like he's saying whatever the Republican Party, the Trump party at this point wants him to say to get in office in Michigan, because of the last election, because of what happened in Detroit and things like that, in terms of them turning out the voter in Detroit and what have you. But like there's a lot of people in this country. He's not the only one. The guy from what is the guy who's dating Mitch McConnell's American Mitch McConnell's niece? I can't remember his name, but he's an elected official. But there's a lot of these individuals, Black people. There's that phrase, well, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, or kinfolk, yeah. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. And I believe that to be true. I think a lot of us will just say whatever we want to say in order to appease a group of people so we can get money and fame and recognition and things of that nature. And I think he's one of those. And this initiative that he's trying to push forth to become to become the governor of Michigan, I think is on that same line to me anyway.
Liz, do you think that we will see an end to Black History Month potentially with people like this guy coming out the closet and other folks, or not even coming out the closet, but just looking like us and saying, hey, we don't need this Black History Month thing. It's all people history.
Yeah, I kind of believe, I agree with Abdul. It's like, trying to pander to what the right wants to hear. And I think that overall Black folk are starting to really push more for the idea that a month is not enough. We need to be celebrating Black history 365 days a year. And originally the intent by Carter G. Woodson was not that we would only study Black history during February. His fear was, Carter G. Woodson, when he started Black History Week, Negro History Week, actually in the early 1900s, was the idea that a people without history will be destroyed, a people without history will be marginalized. So he wanted to at least around the idea of, it was Abraham Lincoln's birthday was in this month. It was Frederick Douglass's birthday in this month, George Washington. So let's try to find a month where we can, as a people, focus internally and celebrate our history. Not that we would only celebrate Black history during February, but that we would at least try to memorialize Black history. And unfortunately, you do have some of those in the margin. Utah, another example where the parents are pulling the kids out of Black history. The kids don't want to study Black history. I've been a K-12 teacher. I've been a higher education teacher for 10 years. I've been teaching in higher education. And I think that by and large, Black history is just not taught enough. There isn't enough emphasis on Black history. Black History Month is not enough. And we have to make sure that in order for us to tackle some of these issues as a country, the idea that we don't need to study Black history, or that Black history month should just be all history month, is absolutely ridiculous. Because in schools, the curriculum does not incorporate Black history anyway. So the idea that we should have 1 month is definitely not enough. And I think the intent originally was just so that we could try to have some remembrance of the ancestors and try to really amplify their contributions. But the idea that we will not have Black history, or that Black history should be marginalized or not even be a month, I think it's definitely something that is pandering to some of these, the idea that someone kind of sell their soul and say something that is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's really sad in a sense as well.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing about it is that they, like, if you look at the history of Black people around the planet, they have gone to extents to say that our skulls were small, so we weren't intelligent enough in order to put us down. They've stolen all of the artifacts from Timbuktu, from Egypt, from where have you, and so people couldn't see the beauty in the science and the math. They stole it from Morocco. They stole it from every place and stuck it away and said now it's ours, and they won't give it back, just so people won't see the contributions that Black people have done across this planet. And it's insane. It's insanity more than anything else. Because anyway, yeah. So stuff like this gets you frustrated to think about. It's just really frustrating to think about the lengths that people will go to in order to suppress Black people in every facet of society. Even the ones that we think we have an advantage of, like sports, they still do things like change rules in the sport just so you can lose. Like it's literally an insane position to take just to make yourself seem superior.
Well, one thing I'm all about are finding solutions and not just staying stuck and mad, even though we have every right to be. And that is, Liz, what you are being the solution to this Black History Month, Black History the way it is taught problem, with your own creation of the Black History and Culture Academy. Before we hop to that, though, I just wanted to shout out Kathy, who Abdul has given you a tip, the Kentucky AG Daniel Cameron, but not married to Turtle's niece. And hello also to Gregory, who's in the house, who's leaving us a YouTube clip. You got to let us know what that's about. And Nicole, hey, girl, hey. So another note, if you are out there watching, chime in. You're part of the show, too. And also don't forget to share and like and subscribe while you're at it. Before I'm looking at the time. Oh, Abdul, what do? Do we hit our last topic, or do we?
No, we should hit our last topic because it pulls into what we're talking about next. So
That is fair. That is fair. So it absolutely does, because it's another name in history that is not in the books and that I just learned about by watching the movie Judas and the Messiah and the Black Messiah. So Liz, have you seen that?
I haven't seen it yet, but it is on my must-watch list, so I definitely will be watching it.
Oh, girl, yes. Put that at the top.
I saw an interview with him on The Breakfast Club, and I thought it was really interesting. So yeah, I definitely want to watch it.
Abdul, you are super passionate about this. You lead us off in this discussion.
Yeah, no, I saw the movie, and so I heard about Fred Hampton like when I was a teenager, growing up, because I was given, Seize the Time, and I was, and a bunch of different books about the Black Panther. So I knew who Fred Hampton was. I knew his contributions to the struggle, and it was really enforced because around the time, I think when I learned about Fred Hampton, I was 16, 15, and Fred Hampton got murdered, and he didn't die. He got murdered at 21.
Yeah.
But he was an activist at like 17, 18, 19 when he was in college and getting people together. His ability, him as an orator, his ability to connect different communities, the Spanish community, the white community, but specifically the Black community, in the attempt to push back against the real, because Chicago, he's from Chicago, and Chicago has always been known to be a very violent, gangster-like culture. And so, not to get off on a tangent, they talk about what's going on with Black people in Chicago right now, and it's something they've been doing in Chicago for years. The mob was over there. The police were corrupt. The governor was selling. Remember a couple years ago, the governor tried to sell Barack Obama's seat when he left Senate, like 10 or so years ago. So Chicago's always been a dirty place, and he was doing his damnedest to try to get those brothers together, and was doing such a great job that they falsely threw him in jail, I think, for like selling ice cream or some little silliness that they tried, and they gave him like 5 years for it. And then on his appeal, when he got out, because his lawyers were able to get him out because the community put money together, and the Black Panthers got money together to get him a really good lawyer, because at the time he was going to court, Bobby Seals was going to court. Oh my God, what's his name? The leader of the Black Panther Party. Help me, Liz. Anyway, he was in jail. He was in jail at the time. The light-skinned guy for the Black Panthers. Why is it? I'm losing my.
Huey
Newton. Yeah, Huey Newton was in jail.
Yes.
Huey Newton was in jail, and Minister of Information. I can't believe what his name was, but he left to Angola. So Fred Hampton was like this lone voice at the time, and he was such a loud voice because of his ability. And they did everything they could to the CIA, COINTELPRO, anything anybody can read about, to get him off the streets. And the day before, because they overthrew his appeal, he was getting sent back to jail. And the day before he was supposed to go back to jail, the police murdered him in his bed while his wife was sitting next to him. Shot him in the back of the head, shot a bunch of people who were sleeping in the house, and they got away. They pretty much got away with it. All they did was they got sued, a civil suit, and they had to pay like $1.4 million or something like that.
Now, knowing all of these things about Fred Hampton before seeing the movie, how do you think the movie portrayed? Did they do justice by the story that you knew?
They did. They had to, chop and remix some stuff. There were some fictional characters in there that really weren't in there, and events that did happen but didn't happen the way they did, like the shooting at the Black Panther offices. And but the thing I was really surprised by was the way they showed the violence that the police did to the Black Panthers, and the lengths that the police and the FBI would go to infiltrate the Black Panthers, and they didn't make it look beautiful at all. So that's what I was surprised by, because normally when they show movies like this, when they show civil rights movies, not documentaries, but movies, acted out movies, whether it be the Malcolm X movie, whether it be Selma, they show the brutality, but they didn't show the corruption that goes along with that brutality. And this movie showed a lot of the corruption that went with the brutality that they handed out to people, because they were really corrupt and they showed it.
Well, I just got notification that we might have CP in the house, also known as Christy Ferris, is on a quick break and is going to pop in to say, hey, while she, hey, there she goes. Hey, Christy.
Hey, everybody. I'm obviously shooting. I do not mean to interrupt the conversation, but I wanted to let you guys know that I'm thinking of you. I know y'all holding it down. So thank God we have a team, but I'll just be sitting up here listening while y'all talk. So they call me back and I'll be like, yeah, we're down here shooting season 3. I'm super excited, and I think I'm in bad lighting, so I'm here. But that's it. So thank you for being on the show too. I just want to say that as well.
Yes, Liz, Christy, Liz. We are holding it down for you, and also sending all kind of good vibes while you're there on set in New Mexico. Can you give us?
Yay!
Christy, can you hear? Can you hear me?
What you just said, you kind of went out a little bit. Yes, I can hear you.
Hey. Oh, so I don't know if you're gonna have to run. Okay. So is there anything that you want? All right. Okay. Later.
All right. So, Christopher says the scene where he is shot and his girlfriend just had that blank face was so powerful. It was like she anticipated him dying in that fashion.
Well, if he was like or Tupac was like him in the sense that he did speak. If you ever listen to any of Fred Hampton's speeches, he would remark about his death. His like he might die early, and he was willing to die for the cause, and he was willing to die for Black people. And he's given several speeches, like not just one, but several speeches. They showed one in the movie, but I know for a fact he did several speeches, and he talked about it. So I think she might have been prepared for it to happen, because all the things that were happening to them at the time, gunfights and shootings and burnings, that they burnt their offices at one time, and then they shot it up at one time, and then and the death threats, the constant death threats, the constant police presence. So I kind of think she knew, and she was pregnant, by the way. People forget that she was pregnant, and they pointed the gun at her stomach and said something to the effect, and I can't quote it directly, but like, we should pretty much get rid of you and what's inside of you, because we don't need any of this. So. Well,
if you haven't seen it, just block out all these things. Block out all these spoilers. But
they're not spoilers. They're historical statements.
That is true. You could find out these things without watching the movie. But I thought the movie did an outstanding job, and all of the performances were amazing. And it was very hurtful to have never heard of Fred Hampton before watching the movie. So I think, and for me, it wasn't even necessarily his position as a Black Panther. I think it was his ability, and not just his oration expertise and prowess, it was his ability to use it to bring people together. It was the ability to be all about the people, because it wasn't just the Black folks. He went to the poor white folks. He went to the Puerto Ricans, and he was building his own coalition, but of the people, and realizing we have so much more in common than we do different, and using that to get the man, to bring the man down. So powerful story. And bringing back Black History Month, bringing back you to the conversation, Liz, in terms of how we learn about these things without it having to be a movie in 2020 is what you have created. Tell us about your Black History and Culture Academy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that started to disturb me last year after George Floyd was lynched in front of all of our eyes was that a lot of people, we talked about Fred Hampton, you can name so many different leaders, civil rights leaders. Martin Luther King died as one of the most hated men in America. He died with a 75% disapproval rating. The FBI called him the most dangerous Negro in the country. We're not taught these stories. We're taught a whitewashed version in school. I taught American literature, I taught American history, and it's like a chapter or it's a page, and you get Rosa Parks, you get Martin Luther King, you get certain historical figures, but you don't get a full range of what the African American experience has been. And it didn't start with slavery in America. Obviously, it started on the continent of Africa. And there's a dearth of, I had an article that ran in LinkedIn News is doing a feature for Black history where they have courageous conversations. One of the things I said in the article was that there's no national curriculum for a set of standards for teaching Black history in America. Only a small number of states, a handful of states actually require that Black history be taught in public schools. And even then they cover it very briefly. 7 states don't mention slavery in their state standards. 8 states don't mention the civil rights movement. Only 2 states mention white supremacy. 16 states say that the states' rights were the cause of the Civil War, which we know not to be true. The states' right was the right to own slavery, not just the states' right just to do whatever you wanted to do. But we saw that at the Capitol last month, where there's a warped idea of what history really is, and people act on that. So when people think, oh, history is something that happened in the past, let's worry about today, you can't do that, because historically laws have been passed, Black folk have been marginalized, and all of that has a trickle-down effect to where we are today. So we have to study that in order for us to understand. Maya Angelou said it best: you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. And I think in this country, we have an idea that we can just start today and just forget about yesterday. And we know we don't do that in any aspect of our lives. No one would do that. Even a logical person, just in how you conduct your day-to-day life, none of us do that. So as a country, we obviously can't do that. And I just started to feel like we're not learning it in school. I know that because I've been an educator for 20 years. What can I do to try to make a dent in that? People are reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I didn't know that. I didn't learn that. I didn't take history, Black history in school. I didn't take it in college. I didn't take it in K through 12. I wish I could learn from you because I'm an educator and that's what I love to do. So I created the Black History and Culture Academy, which is basically, if I was going to have my own school, in my head, I'm like, what would I make that? And that's what I created. It's a platform with micro learning, so someone can in an afternoon learn about radical Black leaders. In the afternoon, you can learn about African literature. You can learn about contemporary African American literature, African American poetry, the history of African American music. I have about 20 courses in the program. I have 20 in the coming soon. So I plan to have by summer, 50 courses will be active in the program. It's subscription based. So it's like Netflix. So you can pay a monthly subscription fee and you have access to all the courses in the program. They're 4 module courses. So in an afternoon, you could basically study. And I've had like one of the LinkedIn editors subscribed, the CEO of Logitech subscribed, college presidents have subscribed and have told me, wow, I sat down and drank my coffee in the morning and took a class on HBCUs and the Black college experience. I didn't know what that was, and now I know. So it gives people the ability to, in a very non-judgmental environment, there's discussion boards so the students can discuss what they're learning, bounce ideas off of each other. I give feedback on the questions, so I have some discussion questions thrown in, but it's not assessment heavy. I don't want it to feel like a college course because I want it to be something where you feel like it's personal development and you're just literally just having micro learning where you're learning about something, not a Wikipedia page. It gives you a ton of information you don't need, but I weave a story. I'm a storyteller, so I like to think about where we came from, where we are today, and how does this apply to the future, and how can you use it to be more informed about what we need to do better as a country. So that's why I just decided to create that. I'll have 100 courses in there by the end of the year. That's my goal. And there's more than enough material because we are rich, amazing people, the Black diaspora. So I'm going to talk about Caribbean history. I'm going to talk about indigenous people. I'm going to talk about even on every continent where Black folk have been, what we've done and how we've contributed. I did a post on LinkedIn about the first Black samurai. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a course about that because we need to know that our history is just not limited to slavery and civil rights movement. That is just scratching the surface of what Black people have done and what we've contributed, not just in America, but around the globe. And we need to make sure we amplify that for ourselves. And also, I've had people tell me, I'm going to sit down with my child. I have an 11-year-old. I had a woman in New Zealand. She's like, my 11-year-old is a social justice warrior, and I'm going to sit down with him, and we're going to study your class together so he can go out and be a social justice warrior because he's 11 and he wants to make change in this world. And that's what I do this for, because I want to make sure that we are able to have the tools that we can do to be effective so that we can make change. Have to be educated in order to do that. And we can't really make change if we don't know what we're changing. So that's the purpose of the program.
Have there been any pushback in terms of what you tried to do? Because recently the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones's efforts. She's gotten a lot of pushback from what she's done. So what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, has there been a lot of pushback from it?
It's a really good question. I think for me, I have over the course of the past year really developed a following on LinkedIn. So there's a trust factor there in that people have seen me grow and develop. I started with 7,000 followers. Now I have over 36,000 followers on LinkedIn. So I've gone to the point where people have seen me ever since George Floyd was killed. I decided I was going to post every single day about Black folk, whether it was marginalization, whether it was wages, whether it was police brutality, whether it was hiring practices, whether it was Black women not getting funding for business. I don't care what happens. I post every single day. People say, where do you get content? It's inspired, because I wake up in the morning, I'm like, you know what? People need to know this about Black folk. And I post about it. And I think for me, I have gotten actually over the course of the past 30 days, over 130 students have actually subscribed to the platform. So I'm looking at I'm like about almost like 40% of the students that visit the platform actually enroll. I have probably, I don't know, maybe 80 students that are taking the free course on anti-racism, which is like a little preview course just to kind of get your feet wet so you can learn a little bit before you subscribe. So I have actually gotten a really positive response. I've had a lot of people that are saying, you know what, this is really good information. This gives me the ability to come in and not feel intimidated. I can learn something that I didn't know about, and I know that you'll give me feedback. I give certificates. So people have been posting their certificates of completion on LinkedIn that they finished these courses. So I so far have not gotten any pushback. If anything, I've actually been very inspired and encouraged by the students that have signed up. I get texts from people saying, hey, I have a question about this. What was the purpose of, Nat Turner or Jim Crow? What was that about? Or what about, this idea or that idea? So I'm actually getting a lot of interaction with the students, and I love it. I enjoy it because I feel as though a lot of the ignorance is just from people not knowing and not understanding. And the more that we can educate people, the more informed they will be to be able to go into their communities and make change. And that's really what it's all about.
Are they Black kids, white kids? Who are the majority of the people taking your program?
The majority of the people and it's mostly been organic through just my reaching out on social media and just being someone that's present on social media. I would say just from LinkedIn, looking at the majority of the signups, it has been from those that are white, those that are just wanting to learn and want to be social justice warriors. If I had to guess, just from names and just from looking at who's familiar and names that I'm familiar with seeing, it's probably like maybe 60-30, something like that, of white folk to Black and other people of color that are taking the program. So I would definitely feel as though the majority of those are people that maybe didn't take it in school, don't know about it, are not familiar with it, and want to be more effective. They want to be more they don't know what to do, they don't know where to start, and they don't feel that they're informed enough to be able to make an impact. So they want to learn so that they can speak out. And I've seen a lot of them that once they're in the program, then I see them on LinkedIn posting like, well, pushing back, like, wait, that's not true because I learned such and such and such. So I think that a part of it is there definitely is people that are willfully ignorant. There are people that are just apathetic. But there are also people that are afraid to speak out because they don't really feel informed about the issues. I think for me, as being someone that's in education, I know just how pervasive that ignorance is. And a lot of it is pushed by the textbook publishers. A lot of it is the curriculum. You got to remember who's in control and who's in power when we think about K through 12. And you're talking about middle-aged white men, and the majority of teachers, middle-aged white women. So are they really going to be really engaged in trying to teach Black history? A lot of times they're not. So I feel as though those that are willing to take the next logical step, which is I have to inform myself so I can be, and I don't even say ally, you got to be an advocate. You can't just be liking a post. Don't like my post. And then what are you doing? Are you speaking up? Are you going on your job? Are you educating people in your family? Are you educating your kids? I think it has to be something where it becomes like a ripple effect as we try to change society. And I think that's really a part of it. It's those that want to be informed. I think we as Black folk, for the most part, we understand that there's a lot of problems, and we understand that, like you, I went to a predominantly Black school. So I was really instilled in, I was reading Autobiography of Malcolm X when I was in high school, and I was reading Sheikh Anta Diop. I was reading controversial writers like Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. That white folk don't want to, they're actually afraid. And I think a lot of that, even Dave Chappelle said it. He's like, this is a dying gasp of, we have to admit that the Census Bureau is saying, but that in the next 20 years, 15 to 20 years, people of color, Black folk and people of color will be the majority. So you have
you call it genetic annihilation.
That's exactly. And the truth is the truth, because if you have now the Latino community, you have, my children are biracial. So you have a lot of folk that are intermingling, and you have these people that are going to be racially ambiguous, and it's not going to be simply white and black. They're going to be a whole generation of young people that are going to be brown, and you're not going to be able to tell what they are. So what are we going to do as a country? How do we reckon with how we have treated Black folk in this country? We need to make sure that we're being very intentional about learning all of the disadvantages and all the marginalization that's happening in our Black community. We got to close the wealth gap. We've got to look at equal pay. We've got to look at the hiring. We've got to look at the fact that we don't have enough Black folk in leadership positions in higher education, in corporate, in Congress, in all these areas. But we saw Georgia stand up. We're seeing that a lot of the school systems where the students are saying, hey, you need to bring Black history. Utah, they had that situation, but you have a lot of other school districts around the country where the parents are pushing back and the students are even pushing back. So that's what we have to make sure that we focus on, is trying to make sure that those accurate narratives are told so that we can really reframe the way that we have been marginalized for too long. And I think those of us that are in this work, we're just sick and tired of it, and we're not going to let it happen anymore.
I think you touched on this, but Sam is in the house and had a question. Who gets to set the curriculum in public schools? It seems that even in the major progressive cities, lots of important history is ignored.
It's very difficult, and that's why I feel as though, for me, I homeschooled my children. My daughter is 22. She was homeschooled in high school. My son is 6, and I'm homeschooling because a lot of it is very multi-layered. State of Florida, Black history is required as a subject, or is required to be taught. I was a K through 12 teacher, and I did not see that. So even if the state requires it, you still have multiple layers. You have the district, you have each individual school. Are they really doing it? And I think that I personally did not want to rely on the school system to take advantage, to be responsible for teaching my children, because I just did, even as an educator, I didn't trust those that are in those. So as parents, I think we have to stand up. We have to go down to the school. We have to be involved. But at the same time, it's like a lot of that is really hit or miss. For someone that's worked in education, there's accreditation, there's the textbook publishers, there's the school system itself, there's all of the faculty members. I saw a recent thing on social media where a young gentleman in high school, I think in an AP class, he was pushing back against a teacher because she said, oh, they didn't really use the N word. It's just saying someone's ignorant. It wasn't really a slur. And he was like, what are you talking about? Pushing back against a teacher. So even if you as a parent, or you as a school district, or you as a school, or you as a state are requiring that you have inclusive and multiracial curriculum, you can't control what the teacher is doing in the classroom. And I think there was even a situation where a little girl was being, a 4th grader was being teased and called the N-word and things like that. And the teacher told her, don't tell your dad. So things like that, there's a lot of things that need to change in our public schools. For me, I think the big push needs to be making sure that more Black and brown teachers are in the classroom. But I haven't seen enough initiatives. Even 20 years ago, there was a lot of push to say we need to have more recruiting of Black teachers, but it still hasn't changed much. That only 5% of college faculty are Black, only 7% of college administrators are Black, only 8% of Black workplaces in corporate America have Black leadership. So on a whole, we can't make, as our esteemed soror Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, pull up a chair. But if they're locking the door and you can't get in, it makes it very difficult for you to make change. So for me in my household, I teach my own children. And I know that's probably not the answer that a lot of people want to maybe really reckon with, because not everybody's in the situation to be able to do that. But I think it's going to take a lot for us to be able to change things at the national level. That has to be pushed. That national agenda has to be pushed. And I wonder if the current administration really has a stomach for it. Joe Biden yesterday saying, well, they're not going to tackle student loans. Student loans is a big issue of why we have such a huge wealth gap in America, because largely student loans are being utilized by Black and brown students because they can't afford to take out to be able to go to college. So there's a lot, I think, nationally that needs to be done, but it really depends on each state. Each state has their own curriculum and guidelines, and then each district will enact that in each school. So there's so many different layers of it, micro level down to the teacher and what the teacher does in the classroom. When we have teachers saying, oh, act out slavery and say why you would have purchased a slave, or some of these crazy assignments that you see that are circling around on social media where the teacher after the fact is, oh, they shouldn't have did that. You shouldn't have to tell a teacher not to do an assignment like that. So me as a parent, I'm just putting on my parent hat here, not even an educator's hat. I really felt like I had to take the control and make sure that my children were not, subjected to that, because I don't trust the school system, to be honest.
And a lot of these books, even went as far as to change the wording from slaves to helpers.
Yeah, they did say that. That was McGraw-Hill.
It was McGraw-Hill, yeah.
About that. Yeah, that was another. I saw that myself when I was teaching. When I taught American literature many years ago, it said that states' rights. It wasn't about slavery. It was specifically they just wanted the right to be able to have their own, be able to have their own say so, which we know is a total farce as far as history is concerned. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But when you have to battle the publishers, the school itself, you have to battle the system, the accreditors, the administration. There's just a lot of battles. And that's really literally why I decided to take it into my own hands, at least create the academy. Because I'm like, okay, I can't fight the whole school system. I'm a part of the school system. So it's really difficult to even make change, but I can make change. I always think about change in your own sphere of influence. For me, my sphere of influence is what can I do within my sphere? And I think for a lot of us, it's going to get to that point where it's like, okay, how can I change my immediate household? How can I change my community? How can I change the people that I interact with? Because I think it gets overwhelming for people to try to make change when they think about the whole system, because the whole system is, by and large, I mean, that's why I say systemic racism. It's not something that's only one system. It's institutional. Every single institution, by and large, when we think about Black folk and how Black folk have been marginalized, you have education, you have healthcare, you have criminal justice system, you have literally corporate America, literally every system, Black folk, when you think about well-being, are marginalized in every area. So I always think in terms of, well, what can I control? And what can I do to make it better? And then create larger areas of people that are willing to try to make change in their areas of influence as well. And as each of us try to take on our areas of influence, and we can grow that.
Well, what's great, Liz, is you are
Don't you think?
Hold on one second, Abdul. I'm just trying to give my sister some props. My sister and my son.
No, go ahead.
And that is what you have created is an option for folks who can't exercise homeschooling. They can come home and do your program for their after school homework as part of learning our true history, our unedited history. So I think it's fantastic.
And I have had parents tell me that. They're like, you know what, I'm going to sit down with, I've had several parents actually tell me they've sat down with maybe like middle schoolers through high school, sat down with them, gone through the modules with them. And like I said, it's 4 modules. So it's not like a semester. It's not like what I would build for like a college class. It's more of, you can do this in an afternoon. You can take a couple of days and do it and work through the modules. It's very interactive. It has some text and content to give you foundation. It has some video content. It has some little downloadables that you can use as reference. It has some current articles to kind of pull it together like we did today. Like, what are some current events that really relate to what happened in the past? So I try to kind of tie it all together to make it meaningful. And then some reflection questions are kind of sprinkled in there, here and there, so that you can kind of think about, well, how can I relate this to what I can do to actually make change in this area? So absolutely, it is an option.
Out to Christopher, who says he's going to take it. His PhD gets confirmed this summer. Whoa, congratulations, Christopher. But it never hurts to get different perspectives or learn things that I might not know.
I like that subtle flex he just did there. Yeah, I get my PhD this summer. Yeah. I'm not mad at it. Go ahead. You earned it. Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Abdul, you were saying something.
Yeah, don't you think? Well, 2 things. I think one, I remember growing up. I went to a lot of majority white schools. I went back and forth from like majority Black schools and like majority white schools. Like I moved around from school to school a lot. But a lot of the stuff that I learned was from taking weekend programs at like this African. There's a place called Black Gold. That's the name of the place. They had like these African weekend curriculums, and my father put us into this other different curriculums. But there was a lot of books. There's always books and books and books and books around. But one of the things that happened to some of these places, like Black Gold, like some of the places I used to go to up in Harlem, that had these African studies on the weekends, is that they found a way to call the people who own these schools or programs like almost like terrorists, and wind up finding a way to shut it down. And they're doing that a lot now on the internet. We're calling people insurgents and calling people terrorists who are just trying to, they shut down Alex Jones. Not that I agree with what Alex Jones says, but the fact that he's just trying to put out his version of information out there, you have these platforms trying to shut him down. Are you concerned that they will do that to you with your program?
No, I think the thing about my program that makes it really different is that you have to be like someone that's committed It's not like a website. It's not something you can just go and get information. I want someone that actually wants to do the work and wants to work through. I'm a course developer by my job. Like I've done this for almost a decade. So I'm not looking for someone that just wants to go on a Wikipedia page and just read up something on, Black poetry or whatever the case may be, African-American poetry, where did it come from? I want someone that actually wants to commit to the narrative of, okay, how can you build on a foundation of knowledge for an outcome? So for me, it's subscription-based, it's behind the paid wall, and it's behind, I think the premise of that is you are a student, you're here in a safe environment, right? So inside the schools, inside the school, everyone that has subscribed to the program has made a commitment to understand that I'm going to be subscribing. I'm going to be working through these programs. I haven't had any cancellations. I think I've had one person that hasn't renewed their subscription out of over 100 people. So that means that everyone that's signing up is committed to the idea that they're going to work through these courses for as long as they feel like it's going to be beneficial for them. So I don't necessarily feel that way, only because I feel that sometimes when you have a website or something that's just out there and people are like, oh, I want to rip that apart, I don't believe in that, or that's being divisive, or whatever the case may be. This is a knowledge base. This is somewhere where we're actually creating a community of discourse for us to be able to learn from each other. And the majority of people that are in there are people that really want to be woke. They're people that want to not unplug themselves from the matrix. They're not necessarily people that are coming in there to kind of like pick it apart. They're really people that want to learn and gain more from it. And can't even see it unless you actually subscribe to it. So they have to actually be someone that's actually committed to doing the work. And I've even had people that have signed up for the year. So I have like a discounted program where you can sign up for a whole year. And I've had some people that have been like, you know what? I don't want to just pay for every month. I know that I'm going to commit a year to doing this, and they pay for the whole year up front. So I feel as though the commitment level and the amount of trust that I've developed in terms of social media and people knowing that I myself am committed to this. I've said this many, many times, that learning Black history saved my life. And I don't even take that lightly. I grew up in the heart of Fort Lauderdale. Like my school was 90% Black, and that was the only school I went to. 80% of the students were poverty level. About 80% of the students got free lunch, and I was in that number. And I had parents that were immigrants. I didn't know if I could get into college. I didn't know. I knew that my parents said I had to go to college, but did I know anyone that had been to college? I didn't know anything about college. The only college I knew was what I saw on A Different World, maybe Hillman College on TV, because I didn't know anyone that had ever even been to college. So the idea of going to college was something that was very abstract to me. And I feel as though reading Dr. Frances Cress Welsing or reading Sheikh Anta Diop, when I read African Origins of Civilization and I opened up that book and I saw the great cities that popped out of those pages, like African people had cities, African people were great, African people were these amazing kings and queens. It literally changed the way that I viewed myself as a person. And that's what I want to instill in people. I want to instill in young people and even those in the dominant culture. I think a lot of people, the reason why they're able to marginalize Black folk is because of these rhetoric, this narrative that's been portrayed as, oh, well, Black folk are other. And that's just simply inaccurate. Black folk have so many contributions that we have given over the span of since ancient civilizations. And there are people out there that are wandering around and don't really understand just how amazing and rich our culture is. And that's what I'm there to prove. Not, all that conspiracy and all the divisiveness. I think that really is about what's going on in terms of TV and what sells as far as, the news and the media. But for me, I look at history as a foundation. You cannot know where you came from where you're going, if you don't know where you came from. And that's really why I'm doing this program.
That's powerful. Kimberly Morgan, who's also a Florida girl in the house. Hey, Kimberly, she asked, how can we help you get the word out? What groups do you want to market to the most?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of shows, whether it's podcasts, whether it's panels. Today I had like two major. Reddit did an Ask Me Anything with them. I've spoken with those at Google. I've spoken with just a lot of national platforms as far as LinkedIn did a feature on so anyone that wants to learn about Black history, anyone that wants to amplify that message. It's really funny. Someone was asking me about the platform and I said, I didn't even tell anyone. I think the only person I told was my husband, because I launched it last month on the day of the Capitol. And I was like, you know what? It'll be really embarrassing considering that I'm on social media. Everyone's following me. I'm this Black history guru. And if I have this platform out there and no one signs up, I will be mortified. And I think I had like, I don't even know, like 40 signups like that first day. So I think for me, I just want anyone that wants to learn about our history, anyone that, you know, on social media, if you want to promote it, I have an affiliate program. So those that want to actually sign up and bring that knowledge to their friends, to their social media, and promote the program, I'm willing to do that as well. Right now, I've had a lot of corporate organizations like that are in the workplace, as far as workplace organizations that have been approaching me to ask about offering it for their employees. So really, it's just evolving. It's not something I put a lot of thought into, because honestly, I was like, I might have 3 students and that'll be like, at least I did something. So the fact that I have over 100 students right now, I'm almost in a state of shock. And it's been like maybe not even 6 weeks. So I'm definitely open to anyone just promoting it, whether it's in their own social media circles, whether it's with their jobs. Like I said, I've had a lot of jobs that are reaching out to me and saying, hey, how can we bring this to our employees? So I'm definitely open to that as well. Just the idea of getting the word out to any and everyone that will listen to the importance of why we need to know Black history. We cannot understand where our country is going if we have no historical foundation for Black folk and the contributions that Black folk have given to this country.
All right. Tangerine, also our soror Liz, is checking in.
Hey, Tara.
And shouting out and giving some love. Good to see you, Tangerine. And Liz, thank you so much for doing your part. Man, where does this hour go? It goes too fast, because I actually have a question that I have been dying to ask. And I'm going to take some time right now and ask it. And that is, out of all of the things that you teach that we don't know, give me something in your top 3 that will knock our socks off. As 1, we ain't know, but 2, something we should know as we move forward as our nugget for Black History Month 2021.
I think the things that I'm always trumpeting are the things I've actually already talked about. So I already like spilled the beans before I even got here. But the 2 things I always talk about is the fact that Black folk, the Black man is the original man. And I think that that's something that always knocks people for a loop, because they're like, well, I thought history started in Europe. No, Africa is a cradle of civilization. That's something that I think if there was anything that I could say, that would be the main thing I would want to say. And I'd also want to say that African-American history did not start with slavery. Those, I think, are the 2 most important things that I always talk about. And I've said it already, but I will reiterate that African culture, the humanity of everybody started in the African cradle of civilization, and African-American history did not begin with slavery. There were rich cultures and rich history long before slavery, and they all started in Africa. And those are the 2 things I want everybody to know and understand.
All right. Abdul, do you have any last questions for Liz?
No, could you give them, because one of your courses was about the Black Samurai. What was his name? His name was started with a Y, right?
Yasuki.
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 Yeah, Yasuki. Yasuki.
Yasuki.
He was like from Mozambique or something like that. Can you tell the people just a little bit about him before we get off and go to our BPS person of the week?
Yeah, I mean, he was a samurai. He was in ancient Japan. I mean, these are all these little facts that no one is aware of and nobody thinks about or no one learned about. He was a samurai that accompanied a Jesuit priest way in ancient times in Japan, and he actually became known. He was like 6'5". He was like 200 pounds. He was no one really knows exactly where he was from. They think he probably was from Mozambique. But the thing about him was that he became the first Black samurai. He was someone that was lauded as riding into battle. He was known as being very strong, very brave. He has his master sword skills. And it was something that was very unusual, because people actually, the Japanese people, they crowded over each other. They would try to jump over each other to see him. And people were even trampling over each other because they were so amazed by everything that he was and everything that he brought as far as his sword skills. And he was known as probably the bravest samurai, because he would just ride into war just with no kind of fear whatsoever. So that was the first.
And he was extremely skilled.
Very skilled. And Chadwick Boseman was actually slated to play him in a movie before he passed away. Netflix had commissioned and slated Chadwick Boseman to play him in a movie, unfortunately, before he passed away. So yeah, That would be definitely a
I
little
read about
known
him
Black
like
history
years
fact.
ago. I read about him like years ago, and they said this guy, mind you, because he was so tall and
Like 6'5".
like they described him like broad shoulders. He had this really long sword that he would carry, and they said that in battle, they have this thing where samurais attack each other when they go in terms of off the horse and hand-to-hand combat. They said this guy was so brave that he never flinched.
Yeah.
He has a sword coming at him, and he never flinched. Yeah.
Yep. He was
Anyway,
so well known because
really,
of the fact that he was so brave, and he would just ride shoulder to shoulder at the front, like just like not even in the middle, not in the back. He would be like leading the charge. So yeah, there's all these stories. If you think about the idea that a lot of people in Japan at that time, in ancient Japan, had never even seen a Black person before, and then this Black person comes and is riding into battle shoulder to shoulder. The idea of even becoming a samurai, if you think about Japanese culture, it's almost like us saying, oh, I'm going to be the president. That's like something that was unheard of for anyone to become a samurai. So the idea that someone comes from Africa with the sword skills and with that know-how to even battle and to be able to be a samurai was like unheard of, because it's like, okay, even someone that's from here, it's very unlikely that person will ever become a samurai. So for someone to be from Africa, for another continent, and gain enough sword skills and mastery and bravery to be shoulder to shoulder with other samurai, that was like, wow, that was like amazing. So yeah, that story, I love that story, and I always post it. I think I've posted about it like twice now over the past like year, because it's so inspiring. The idea of someone wielding a sword like that and being so like revered. But Black people have been revered. Black people, I think it's the narrative of Black people as other, the narrative of Black people as something that's not to be, I mean, we know Black culture is revered around the globe. It's something in particular in America where for some reason the Black culture is something that's like everyone wants our rhythm, but they don't want our blues, right? And I think there's something that's, that narrative needs to be something that's turned upside down. We need to reimagine Black history so that we can gather strength. I always gather strength from the ancestors. I think about what they had to go through, what they had to overcome. And I can't flinch either. You know, I have to go into the battle because if he could do it, considering the circumstances, then I have to be able to gather the strength to be able to do anything I can to make sure I can and leave a lasting impact on this world as well. And that's something I guess that would be the one thing that I would tell us to do. Make sure that we, within our sphere of influence and whatever we can do, whatever our superpower is, this is your superpower. If your superpower is your voice, then you use your voice, whatever that superpower is, so that we as a people can continue to overcome. We've triumphed so much. Think about him with his sword, and he's with Asian people, with Japanese people, and is out of his own element, out of his country, probably didn't speak the language, but somehow had to overcome all of that to become the first Black samurai. So if he could do that, there's nothing we can't do.
I love it. And I think that is a mic drop moment to put a beautiful bow on this powerful conversation. But before we fully end our time with you, Liz, we're to our BPS of the week. Tell us again where we can find you, how to take your course, how to follow you, and all these nuggets that you are dropping daily.
I am on LinkedIn, so I'm Elizabeth Leiba on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Just look me up and connect with me. I accept all connection requests. I'm just really open to connecting and finding like-minded people to dialogue with. I'm on Instagram, so I'm Your Queen to Be on Instagram. The academy is www.blackhistorycultureacademy.com. So you're able to go there, take a look at the courses. There's 20 courses, micro-learning courses, subscription Netflix-style courses, 20 courses now. I'll have 50 courses by summer, 100 courses by the end of the year. So the value will increase as the year goes on, and I keep building and building. I think the next class is the Black Samurai. You got me started, Abdul. That's the course I'm going to build next.
Your Queen to Be. Did you get that from Coming to America?
I sure did. That Instagram is like from 2009. So that was long before I was married, but I was your queen to be at that time.
All right. I just want to shout out a few more for chiming in on the conversation. What's up, Spence? He's saying, hey, BPS fam, even gave a shout out to Tangerine.
Tangerine. Yeah.
And then, of course, Tangerine has a comeback for you, Abdul. Look at you looking good with all that good lighting. Liz, all that.
Goddamn right.
all that last season, Abdul did not have not one ring light. So he was just a brother, like in the dark. So
Abdul, say it
I
ain't
don't
so.
like cameras.
Oh,
I honestly don't like cameras. But,
well, you're doing the most and doing a lot with that lighting right now, so that's a good thing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So thank you for that positive encouragement, Tangerine.
And by the way, that wasn't a compliment. That was a shot. That was not a compliment from Tangerine. That was a shot.
Slight shade there, Abdul. A little bit of shade.
All right. Oh, and one last comment by Tangerine. Yep, everyone wants our rhythm, but they don't want our blues. So great. All right, so this final segment of every week, when we come to you with This Week in BPS, we recognize somebody in the community doing big things and taking our as Black folks forward. Now, you might have thought when you tuned in that me and Abdul were dressed alike. You'd be right, we are. Abdul says Black men are coming for everything they said that we couldn't have, and mine says the one for women. Black women are coming for everything they said we couldn't have. This was made and lovingly given to us by our BPS of the week, Rashonda Fuller. She has got her Instagram page, Statement Tees and Things, where not only does she have this logo, but many other things creatively uplifting us as Black folks and also showcasing her own creativity and entrepreneurship. We love highlighting Black-owned businesses here on This Week in BPS. So thank you, Rashonda Fuller, for being an example of an outstanding person moving our story forward. So,
and she can also customize sweatshirts, t-shirts, and other things for you. So if you want something specific that doesn't say what we have on our shirt, or you want something that that you want to create on your own, please contact her and get a shirt made, get a couple shirts made.
Yes, and she is representing. We got Christy Ferris, who's on another quick break, representing and saying that she is from Middletown, Ohio, where her family is from. So shout out to Black folks in the Midwest holding it down, our very own Christy Ferris, and now Rashonda Fuller, who is part of our BPS fam.
Thank you, Rashonda Fuller, for the shirts and all that you're doing to inspire and help Black people in the diaspora.
Absolutely. I'm wearing it with pride.
Yep.
And I can't wait to get my education on with all that Liz is offering. So thank you, Liz, for not only dropping knowledge and spending time with us today, but what you are doing for the world and the greater good that will last past the test of time, re-educating us and educating us on things that were purposefully left out of our story. So thank you very much. It is an honor.
One last thing, Rashonda Fuller is actually in our comment section.
Oh!
She said, thank you. And so if anybody wants to hit her up right now about getting a shirt made or anything made, please, that's her Facebook page. And please buy from both of these beautiful Black women and get everything that they're selling.
Yes, and again, her Instagram is, if you're an Instagram person instead of a Facebook person, it is Statement Tees and Things.
So.
All right. Well, please tune in next week. Next week, we are talking, what's the brother's name, Abdul?
Something, Black man.
No, I want to give everybody their proper props. Next week, we hope to have
Blair Nash
Ferris in the house. So good luck in the meantime, Christy Ferris. And yes, Blair Nash. She's got a book, Black Sex, Money, and Relationships. So that sounds real spicy. So come on back and get another dose. In the meantime, check Liz out and have an outstanding week, everybody. Abdul, any last anything?
You look really nice today, Janora.
Oh, boom.
Last week.
Liz, last week he called me what, hell spawn or something?
I called you a hell spawn, yes.
Yeah.
No, I can't believe you do that, Abdul.
Thank you. But anyway, that's just something me and Abdul do every week. We were actually getting along
today
with something nice. So we are all going to end with something nice and positive.
Good.
Happy Black History Month. Again, check Liz out and see y'all next week.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thank you.
Yes, and love